Problem 4 in Connect, this is exercise 1116 in your textbook, asks you to compute and then apply operating leverage. So let's wade through the babble and see what they want here. They want us to use the contribution margin approach, which is good because I don't know any other approach. And the contribution margin approach is simply the contribution margin divided by net income. If there's another approach, no one's told me. Then use the leverage that we computed to determine the amount of net income that they will earn with a 10% increase in revenue. And this is kind of important. They tell us the sales price will not change. So if the sales price will not change, that means the new units will not be 200 units at $66, but 220 units at $60. So that's the 10%. That's the plus 10% that they're talking about. So, and obviously that stays the same here. But these numbers that they've given us, which I'll highlight in green, are the existing numbers. So, let's figure out the leverage using the contribution margin approach. Contribution margin divided by net income. So the contribution margin they give us is 4,800. The net income they give us is 3,200. So the leverage, 4,800 divided by 3,200, is 1.5. So that's their leverage, 1.5. Now they say, part B, use the operating leverage computed above to determine the amount of net income that they will earn with a 10% increase in revenue. So instead of having 12,000, they're going to increase that by 10%. So that'll go to 13,200. But we don't need to go through all that. All we need to do is take the 10% change in revenue times our leverage. It's 15%. Take our 15% of 3,200 and we come up with $480. So our revenue, our income, will change $480. That will be our change in our net income. So our net income will change from 3,200 to 3,680, and that's the 3,200, which I don't seem to be able to write right now, plus the 480, 3,680. That's what they're asking us to do in the first part. Now let me move the numbers up so you can see them too. It's really kind of important for you to see the numbers. I know them. Okay, so we computed the leverage by dividing the contribution margin by the net income. Came up with 1.5. Then they say our income, our activity is going to increase by 10%. So 10% times our leverage of 1.5 will yield a 15% increase in net income. Our net income was $3,200. 15% of that is $480. Add that to the $3,200, we come up with $3,680. Now, if you're one of those math whizzes that sister liked in 6th grade, if you want to take 3,200 and multiply it by 115%, you'll come up with the same exact number. In either case, you got to come up with that number. That's the important part. Now, the next thing it says is, okay, prove it. Well, we're going to increase this by 10%, and then we're going to see what happens at the bottom here. And if our theory holds, that should be 15% more. That should be $3,680. Let's see if it is. 10% of 12,000 is 1,200. Add 1,200 to 12,000, or multiply by 110%. We come up with 13,200. Now, we can't sell 10% more without having 10% more in terms of variable cost, because we have to make the stuff to sell it. So 10% of that is 720. Add 720 to that, and you come up with 7,920 in your variable cost. Subtract that from your sales. You come up with 5,280 as your contribution margin. Subtract your fixed cost, because remember, fixed costs do not change. That's the concept of fixed cost. And we do that, we come up with 3,680. And yes, indeed, they do match. So we have shown that a 10% change in income or in revenue will yield a 15% change in net income if we have a 1.5% or 1.5 operating leverage, 1.5 factor as operating leverage. That's an important number to be able to compute, because some industries, that operating leverage number is huge. And they're usually industries like airlines, like cruise ships, like hotels, high fixed cost, low variable cost.